Hello and welcome. My name is Ryan with JL Designs. This is the installation video for the Aprilia RS660. First, we're going to do a quick overview of the Eliminator and the hardware. Your Fender Eliminator will arrive assembled like this. The swivel bracket will already be mounted. We've already Loctited the bolts, so when you do go to tighten or adjust, there will be some resistance. Alright, you'll see some curvature here on the wire. Don't straighten it out as it's supposed to angle that direction. You'll be given hardware in a bag. It consists of 2 long bolts, 2 short bolts, and 4 nylon lock nuts. The long bolts are for the Eliminator kit. The 2 short ones are to mount your license plate to our swivel bracket. Tools required: a 10mm socket, a T30 torque socket, a 10mm wrench, a 4mm Allen or hex key. Alright, step 1. Use the key to unlatch the passenger seat. Once removed, the rider seat can pull straight up. Alright, step 2. Use a 10mm socket and remove the 4 bolts that hold down the rear seat support. Once the bolts are removed, lift the tray straight up. Here I left the bolts and the washers underneath in place. Step 3. Disconnect the white 4-pin connector. You'll find the white 4-pin connector at the back of the bike, underneath the subframe. To access it better, you will have to remove the black 3-pin connector. Pull it up. Alright, pull the white connector out and disconnect it by pushing down the locking tab and pulling apart. Push back the white connector that goes to the fender. This prevents it from getting caught on something when you pull the fender out. Step 4, remove the stock fender. It's held on by 3 bolts. Use a T30 Torx and a 10mm wrench. These are the 2 lower bolts. You will need to access the nuts behind them, and there's one tucked up in a recessed area that goes straight into the subframe. Here's a better angle. You can see it up there. This bolt we are going to reuse. Alright, start with the 2 lower ones that have the nuts on top. If there's not a lot of room for your tool to grab hold of that nut, access it through the front where the rider seat is. Alright, hold the nut with the wrench while you loosen up the bolts from the other side. Be really careful taking the nuts out after you remove the bolt. They want to slide down into the battery tray or in the undertail. Here I had to fish one nut out with my needle nose. Just so you know, our supplied nuts are the same size, just so you have extras in case any are lost. Proceed to the recess bolt. When loosening this one, do make sure the white plug was disconnected, as well as you're holding on to the fender because it's going to come off the bike. Alright, put the bolt you just removed back into that same spot so it can hold the undertail tight and fill up an empty hole. I recommend you putting the 2 lower bolts and nuts that were removed back on that stock fender in case you ever need it. Step 6. Install the JL Eliminator kit. You're going to grab the 2 longer bolts and 2 of the locking nuts, a 4mm Allen or hex key, as well as the 10mm wrench. Feed the wires through the elongated center hole. With your other hand, help pull the wire up. Aprilia has these silver collars that are sticking out. Those go into the recessed backing of our Eliminator kit. Move side to side or up and back till our Eliminator fits flush. Insert the bolts through the bottom up into the tail of the bike. If the bolt is having a hard time, push the base of the Eliminator towards the front of the bike or try rotating the bolt with a tool. Hold the nylon lock nuts with your 10mm wrench. Tighten the bolt with your 4mm Allen. Step 7. Connect both 4-pin white connectors together. Every once in a while with these types of connectors, it may not fully connect. Don't force it if it doesn't connect right away. Look down at the pins. One might be slightly off that you can adjust by a screwdriver. turn the key on and test all the functions. This black connector can go back in place. On the rubber sleeve, there's a little slot, and that gets pushed down onto a black tab. Now we're going to start reinstalling everything. All right, place the seat support back onto the subframe. To avoid cross-threading, start the bolts by your hand. If you're having slight issues lining up a bolt, the rear bolt of that seat support, there's a spring clip, all right? It has threads on it. As you can see, it moves. Keep this in mind if your other bolts aren't lining up. All right, hand thread them and then go back and tighten them firmly. Place the rider seat back on. Lock back in the passenger seat. To install the license plate, use the two smaller bolts with the last two nylon locking nuts. Loosely mount the nut and bolts so you can center it. The license plate needs to be centered so it does not hit the undertail. After you've determined the center, tighten down the bolts. Set your plate to the desired angle, tighten and leave it.